Hi everyone, this is Nikki and welcome to a Design Like a Pro tip. Today I'm going to share with you a little bit about white space, and this is for beginners in design. It's something that we need to think about as designers all the time, so it's a good starting point for any design project because it applies to everything that we do. Now, what is white space? White space is that area around your components that make up your image. For example, this area around here, this area through here, the space from here to here, here to here, all of this is considered white space. It's something that we want to think about when we're designing because we don't want our elements to be crowded. When that happens, it creates an actual reaction to the viewer that isn't pleasant. So if you can make sure that everything has padding around it, has a lot of space between the elements, your final composition will be much better. So this is an example of an album cover that I designed for the release of the Karma Club book by Jessica Brody, and she actually filmed a book trailer for the launch and then had a soundtrack to go with it. So this was an album cover that was displayed on iTunes as well as other places. Now, the key and the reason that I'm using this is there's actually a lot of content in a small amount of space. So this can be challenging when you're trying to make sure that white space is still part of your design. And it can be done even when you have a lot of components. So I'm going to break this project down for you and explain why I position the elements where they're positioned and how white space came to be. So let's go ahead and turn off all of these layers and work from the background up. All right, so we have our background here, clean, simple. We have a nice gradient. This creates depth in the image. I like gradients for that reason because it creates that sort of light to dark depth in our final image. So we start with our first image, okay? Now, I like to work from the bottom up because it really helps for me to see what kind of space I have left. So we start with the main image. The main image is large. It's going to be the biggest piece aside from the background. Why do I do this? First of all, hierarchy is key when you're designing. You can't have everything the same size. It's going to compete. You can't have text all the same size because it's just going to be boring and flat. So you need to have this hierarchy of images. What's the most important? And then have some complementary sizes to go with it. So this is our main image. This is what we want our audience to see. And it's already created some white space. We have some space here and some space here. Another thing to note, it's not directly in the center. We don't have the same amount of space at the bottom as we do on the top. That's a key to composition. You don't want to position things exactly in the center. You don't want the image to be in the center, top to bottom. You don't want her head to be in the center either. So this creates an offset that makes your image a little more interesting. Okay, so the next component we have is that film strip. Okay, two things to note here. One, the size. Two, the rotation. It's not directly up and down. Why? Well, you could do that and it would be fine, but there's so much going on in this image that creating an angle with our film strip here is another way to have some visual interest and direct the eye around our image. Size. It's not as big as this image, and it shouldn't be, because again, it'll compete if you have things the same size. So it's slightly smaller, it comes down through our image, and then it overlaps this image and cuts down into our negative space. That creates some shapes here into our negative space as well as up here. So we have some space on all sides of this film strip. That's key. And it's also cutting into this image, but it's not cutting off anything important, so it's okay. It creates an overlap, which again will create some visual interest while providing you with plenty of space around that photo. Okay, the next thing is our book cover. Now, there's several options when you're looking at this design where I could put my book cover, but really, for me, there's only one. I could put it up in this corner, but it would cut into her head, and like I said, that was the main image and that was our focal point. So I don't want anything overlapping her head. So we have it down in the corner. This also plays into the rule of thirds when it comes to composition, where you have 3 elements instead of even numbers. It makes it more interesting as a final composition. So when we have that, we have our main image here that fills the whole page. Then we have something over on the left side, and then that by process of elimination leaves us with the right hand corner to put our book cover. It again is smaller than any of the other components so that we're not competing, but it's still big enough that we can see what it is. And it does cut into her a little bit, but it's okay because it's not covering her head. That's something we don't want. We want to see her face. So this leaves us with 3 photos around our image. Now we can really get to see our negative space is filling in here, but we've created some great lines to draw the viewer's eye around our image. And it leaves us some white space here for our final text components. Now we do have one more image, and that's our logo, and I put that right there. Now again, this could have gone in several other places, but that is kind of the first thing you see. It's positioned right above her head so that you almost see these two simultaneously. And that's the name of the book, so you really want to see that. Again, it's smaller than anything else so that we have some different sizes going on. It's overlaying these 2 images, which creates visual interest and adds to our composition. But why is it not over in this corner? You may think, let's put it over here. Well, let me tell you, when I'm creating an image, symmetry is something that I think about. Now, this would put things in almost all 4 of your corners. And instead of guiding the eye around, you would almost be darting across all of your corners. And that's okay, but really it just has a better visual interest when it ties these elements all together in the circle right here, instead of having to look here and then down here. Especially because we're going to have some text fill in this spot next. And we need to leave some space open for that. So by having this kind of overlaying here, it frees up some negative space for us to fill in with text. So we have some text here, the name of the album. Now that's at the top because again, that's part of these 3 things are the first thing you want the viewer to see. Everything else is complementary to our image, but not key important points. So we've offset this with some different font choices. That's another way to create white space between these elements, but also create a visual interest because you don't just use the same font and size. So we have a bold font for the Karma Club theme song, and then we have another font for the actual name of the song, and it complements this font used here. And we've even gone so far as to change the color to bring that out a little bit more. Now here's a little tip, side note. When I choose colors for my pieces, I love to pull colors from what's already there. That way you don't have to create new colors, and if you're wondering, well, what's going to work in my image, what's going to look like it goes, that's a great way to pull colors so that you know that it's going to match with what you currently have. So this salmon color was pulled right from the book cover. And then it really looks like it goes with the image. And because there was a lot of brown going on with her hair and with the book cover here, that's why I pulled that dark brown for that color. So it looks like it just automatically goes with what you currently have because you pulled those colors from something that already exists in your composition. So then we finally have space down here for our last bit of text. And we have 3 lines of text. Again, we've used that brown color because we've got a lot of color going on. We don't want to overdo it with something that doesn't match. So I've pulled that brown color down here. I've bolded this top text just to bring it out a little bit from the 3 lines of text. And then you can see that I've left justified it here. So we have a nice line, and then we have some stair-step action over here to cut into this negative space. Now, the white space that I'm talking about is really key when it comes to the edges. You always want to keep your elements far away from the edge. You can see that I have a lot of space around all of my elements. And it's okay if this jets off here because that cuts into it and that's fine. But when it comes through here, it's not really too close. We still even have space between her head and the top. So that's the white space there. But you want to make sure you have plenty of space. Now let me show you what happens when you don't consider that. If you go too close to the edge, do you not get a physical reaction about how not okay that is? You really just feel like that's not okay. You may not even know why it's not okay, but you just physically have a reaction that that is too close to the edge. So we definitely want to move that back. And listen to yourself when you see that. You'll know, and as you train yourself, the more that you practice, your eyes will start to realize that you want to have more space between your elements. So that's a quick look at white space. Basically, in a GIF there, it's all about making sure that you have plenty of breathing room between all of the components of your composition. From the outer edges to the inner edges, you want to make sure that you have enough space between all of your components. So I thank you for tuning in for another episode of Design Like a Pro. Leave any questions or comments below and I'll do my best to answer those. Again, you can always email me at ideas@nikkihart.com. Maybe even suggest a tutorial that you'd like me to cover in an upcoming episode. Until next time, thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe to stay up to date with all of the latest Design Like a Pro episodes.